Hey there, history explorers. If you're hooked on stepping into worlds long gone, hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys. And seriously, tell me in the comments, who should we send next and to what time? All right, let's go. Imagine, if you will, the year 900 CE. You're not in your comfortable bed, not in your modern city. You are, quite suddenly, in what will one day be Trondheim, Norway. The first thing that assaults her is the smell raw, putrid mix of wet earth, animal waste, and something else. Something metallic and unsettling, clinging to the damp air. She, a 33-year-old therapist from our time, trained in the delicate art of human understanding and emotional regulation, finds herself gasping. Her lungs burn with the biting cold, each breath a shock. She feels the heavy, clinging mud coating her modern clothes, now stiff and useless, a stark, unwelcome blanket against her skin. A rough, woolen cloak, stiff with dirt and some unknown grime, is thrown over her, offering little solace from the insistent chill that penetrates to her bones. Then come the sounds. Harsh, guttural shouts echo across a nearby clearing. Not words she recognizes, but imbued with an undeniable ferocity. They are Viking cries, full of a primal energy that chills her to the bone. Her analytical mind, so accustomed to deciphering subtle emotional cues in quiet, controlled environments, struggles to process the sheer, overwhelming sensory assault. There are no safe spaces here, no quiet rooms for reflection, only the vast, open, unyielding landscape and the constant, unnerving sounds of a world utterly alien. Her modern assumptions about comfort, about hygiene, about personal space are immediately shattered. She watches figures, bundled in furs and rough-spun wool, moving with a purposeful, almost aggressive energy around a cluster of crude longhouses. Smoke from cooking fires stings her eyes, a constant reminder of the lack of ventilation and the close quarters. She attempts a smile, a practiced, reassuring gesture she's used to offering clients, but it feels absurd, out of place, even dangerous in this context. The stares she receives are wary, curious, but utterly devoid of recognition for the subtle social signals she's attempting to broadcast. Each interaction feels like navigating a minefield with no map. She shivers, not just from the cold seeping into her bones, but from a profound sense of isolation and disorientation. Her skills, honed for navigating complex interpersonal dynamics and fostering emotional well-being, seem entirely useless against the raw, uncompromising reality of survival in this era. There is no common language for empathy, no shared understanding of trauma or anxiety, only the immediate needs of food, warmth, and protection. How do you counsel someone who might be more concerned with the next meal or the existential threat of a rival clan's raid. The weight of this new, terrifying world presses down on her, the familiar ground of her profession crumbling beneath her. As this first week slowly grinds on, she finds herself not analyzing emotions or offering insight, but just trying to keep warm, to understand a single gesture, to avoid attracting unwanted attention. The mud under her rough boots feels more real than any feeling she's ever discussed in a session. A brutal anchor to an unforgiving present. This existence demands only raw being, leaving no room for the nuanced work of the mind she knows, the unwashed bodies and damp animal furs that saturate the air of the longhouse. It's a jarring sensory assault, a constant, low hum of discomfort. Her modern understanding of personal hygiene and space is not just challenged, it's obliterated. She finds herself navigating a visual cacophony. Tools, sleeping furs, cooking pots, and half-eaten meals are strewn about with a practicality that defies any sense of order she once knew. Shadows dance from the central hearth, painting rough-hewn faces and the busy movements of bodies engaged in endless chores, grinding grain with heavy stones, mending nets, preparing tough, unfamiliar cuts of meat. As a therapist, her innate tendency is to observe, to seek patterns in behavior, to understand the emotional undercurrents of a group. But here, the language is alien, the gestures unfamiliar, and the very concept of emotional processing seems a luxury nobody can afford. She watches the men and women of the settlement, their faces etched with the harsh realities of their lives, noting the quick flashes of anger, the bursts of laughter, the stoic endurance. She sees children clinging to skirts, dogs gnawing on scraps, and the constant, bustling activity that marks a community utterly dependent on each other for survival. There's a raw, unvarnished quality to their interactions, a directness that bypasses all the polite social constructs she's been trained to interpret. She attempts to offer small, non-verbal affirmations, a nod, a tentative smile, when observing a minor dispute over a piece of dried fish or a child's cry. But her gestures, meant to convey empathy or reassurance, are often met with blank stares or a hurried, dismissive grunt. Her modern assumption that all emotional distress benefits from acknowledgement and verbal processing proves utterly unsuited to this environment. Here, a quick, firm hand gesture from an elder or a sharp, unyielding gaze is the immediate method of conflict resolution. There's no space for talking it out when the stakes are so fundamental. Her own body is beginning a slow, unwilling adaptation. The rough wool of her borrowed tunic chafes against her skin, a constant irritation. Her sleep on the hard, communal sleeping platforms is shallow and frequently interrupted by the sounds of snorting pigs or the rustle of bodies beside her. Her diet consists mainly of coarse bread, salted fish, and watery stew. A far cry from the varied nutrition she's used to, and her stomach often rumbles with an unfamiliar ache. She finds herself constantly vigilant, her senses overwhelmed, but also slowly sharpening to this new reality. She starts to mimic the local women, not with understanding, but with careful imitation, learning to distinguish between different types of animal calls, or the scent of a brewing ale versus a simmering broth, the sheer, relentless physical and mental drain of simply existing, of constantly translating every sight and sound and interaction without a guide, is exhausting. She understands now that her modern therapeutic framework, designed for individual introspection and emotional nuance, is a fragile, irrelevant construct in a world that values brute resilience and communal survival above all else. This week has shown her that the greatest challenge is not just survival, but the terrifying re-education of her very understanding of humanity itself. The movement is a persistent reminder of her new reality. This week, the gnawing hunger has deepened, no longer just an unfamiliar rumble, but a dull, insistent ache in her stomach that dictates her every thought, every scrap of food, every opportunity to eat the tough, smoked fish or the thin barley porridge, is met with an intensity that would have shocked her former self. Her modern mind, accustomed to abundance and choice, struggles to comprehend a world where sustenance is a daily negotiation, a victory against a relentless opponent. She finds herself often watching, her gaze drawn to the faces of the men and women around her, particularly when voices rise, sharp and loud, in the longhouse. These aren't the nuanced emotional outbursts she's used to analyzing. They are raw, primal expressions of frustration, anger, or command. The unfamiliar sounds, the guttural shouts, are intimidating, filling her with a cold dread. Her therapist's instinct is to de-escalate, to find common ground, to encourage verbal expression of underlying feelings. But here, those skills are useless. A raised hand might not be a gesture of greeting, but a prelude to a blow. A man's booming voice might be settling a dispute over hunting territory, or demanding a task be done, and the subtext of authority is absolute. She feels a deep, instinctive fear, a primitive warning system overriding her trained empathy. She shrinks inward, trying to make herself small, observing without engaging, acutely aware of her foreignness. Her modern assumptions about civility and conflict resolution are not just hindering her, they are actively dangerous. What she would interpret as a sign of emotional distress requiring intervention, they might see as a challenge and weakness, or an unacceptable outburst. She watches a young boy receive a sharp cuff to the ear for spilling a bowl of stew, his cries quickly stifled. There is no gentle redirection, no discussion of consequences or emotional impact, just immediate physical correction. This directness, this lack of buffer, is a constant shock to her system. She learns to read the tension in shoulders, the narrowing of eyes, the sudden clenching of fists, not for psychological insight, but for immediate threat assessment. She is adapting, not by imposing her modern framework, but by suspending it entirely, by becoming a student of survival in this brutal, straightforward world. She has begun to instinctively hoard small bits of food, learning the rhythm of scarce resources, pushing down the ingrained belief that there will always be more. She's learning to interpret the local women's stern gazes when she hesitates during a chore, understanding that every pair of hands is essential. The communal effort of preparing fish for drying, of gathering firewood, of mending nets, is not a choice, but a requirement for the survival of the entire settlement. A harsh, unwavering truth that permeates every aspect of daily life. The chill wind that constantly bites at her exposed skin, the ever-present ache of hunger, and the fear lurking beneath the surface of every loud, unfamiliar interaction are becoming her new normal. The sophisticated constructs of her former life are evaporating, replaced by the stark, undeniable reality of basic human needs in a world that offers no easy comfort. The risk of an axe biting deep into wood has become a surprisingly constant, almost meditative sound in her days. It carries through the cold air of this Trondheim settlement, not as an isolated event, but as the relentless drumbeat of survival. She sees the strong, calloused hands of the men wielding these tools, splitting logs for the communal fire, shaping timbers for repairs, and sometimes, with a chilling efficiency, dispatching an animal for the evening meal. This week, the sight of fresh blood on the snow, not from conflict, but from necessity, has cemented a brutal truth. This isn't a dream she can wake from. This is simply life here, her therapist's mind, accustomed to understanding motivation and the nuances of human pain in a safe, controlled environment, struggles to reconcile itself with this stark reality. There is no therapy for a dying pig, no counseling for the felled tree. There is only the practical, undeniable need for sustenance and shelter. Her modern assumptions about avoiding violence, about the sanctity of life, are confronted daily by the very acts necessary for this community to endure. She sees the directness in their actions, the lack of sentimentality in tasks that would be traumatic in her former world. It's not cruelty, it's simply existence. The hard, physical labor of moving timber, the constant need for firewood to ward off the biting cold, the relentless processing of resources. It all underpins every aspect of their lives. She observes the children, not shielded from these realities, but growing up amidst them, learning the rhythm of the axe, the preparation of hides, the gutting of fish. Their innocence is interwoven with a practical understanding of death and labor that she, as a 33-year-old, is only just beginning to grasp. Her insights into emotional regulation and psychological distress feel utterly irrelevant in the face of such fundamental, unavoidable truths. How do you discuss coping mechanisms when the immediate task is to haul a heavy water bucket from the frozen well, or risk dehydration for the household? Her body, though still protesting, is slowly hardening. Her hands, once soft, now bear the beginnings of calluses from tasks she is forced to learn, like scraping dried fish or carrying bundles of branches. The dull ache in her muscles at the end of each day is less of a shock and more of a predictable companion. She breathes in the sharp scent of pine and frozen earth, the pervasive tang of wood smoke, and the earthy musk of the animals. And these smells, once alien, are now becoming the very scent of her world. She is not just witnessing survival. She is slowly, painfully, becoming a participant. The comforting illusion of a temporary visit has utterly dissolved, leaving behind only the stark, unyielding face of her new, inescapable reality. The biting chill of the air, a constant companion since her arrival, now brings with it the faint, sharp smell of curing hides, stretched taut on frames near the longhouses. It's a smell that speaks of winter preparations, of survival, but also, to her, of a deep, primal disconnect. This week, she finds herself drawn to the periphery of the village activities, observing rather than participating fully, her movements slower, more deliberate, as if trying to merge with the background. It is in one of these moments of quiet observation that she catches the gaze of a small child, perhaps 4 or 5 years old, peering at her from behind an elder woman's skirts. Those eyes, wide and unblinking, hold a wary curiosity, an ancient suspicion. There's no malice, not yet, but a clear recognition of her profound difference, an intuitive understanding of the chasm that separates her from this world. She tries a gentle, reassuring smile, a professional reflex, but the child's eyes only widen further before it quickly ducks away, clutching the woman's skirt tighter. That fleeting interaction, devoid of words, speaks volumes to her therapist's mind. It reflects back her terrifying isolation, the utter absence of a shared language, a common history, or even a simple, reciprocal emotional exchange. Her modern profession, centered on building rapport and fostering connection, feels like a cruel irony here. She can dissect the child's reaction, understand the primal fear of the unknown, the protective instinct. She knows, academically, how to bridge that gap in her own time. But here, Without shared cultural cues, without a common tongue, her most fundamental skill is rendered utterly impotent. Her tools empathy, active listening, non-judgmental observation are ineffective. They are like trying to build a complex structure without gravity. Her very understanding of human relationship is challenged. She sees the easy flow of communication among the villagers, the unspoken understanding between mother and child, warrior and elder, and she feels like a ghost, witnessing life through a thick, distorting pane of glass. The physical demands continue to sculpt her body into something harder, more enduring. Her hands have developed a rough resilience, accustomed to the splinters of firewood and the coarse texture of animal hair. She has learned to distinguish the calls of different birds, to gauge the severity of the cold by the way the wind bites. But the internal landscape remains barren, a vast, echoing space of profound loneliness. She watches the communal meals, the shared laughter over some story she doesn't understand, and the quiet comfort of intertwined bodies sleeping in the longhouse. Each scene, meant to be a testament to community, only serves to underscore her utter separateness. This week has been a stark, cold lesson that true survival is not just of the body, but of the spirit, and that a lack of human connection is its own kind of freezing, isolating death. The aroma in the longhouse suddenly sharpens with the acrid tang of rising tension. A small boy, perhaps no older than 5, has just overturned a basket of precious dried berries, scattering their meager bounty across the mud floor. His mother's face, etched with the weariness of constant struggle, tightens into a mask of frustration. Her hand, calloused from labor, instinctively rises, and the boy, sensing the impending correction, lets out a raw, piercing shriek of fear and defiance that cuts through the communal hum. Her therapist's training, dormant for weeks beneath the crushing weight of survival, suddenly jolts awake. She sees the familiar pattern, the child's acute emotional dysregulation, the parent's frayed nerves, the potential for a cycle of distress and punishment. Language remains an insurmountable barrier, but the fundamental architecture of human distress, she realizes, is universal. While she cannot offer an explanation or a coping strategy, she can offer a presence. Slowly, carefully, she lowers herself to a crouch, making her posture less threatening, drawing the boy's tear-streaked eyes towards her. Then, she lets out a soft, sustained murmur. It is not a word, not in any language understood here, but a deep, resonant hum, a gentle, almost droning sound that carries an unmistakable intent of calm. It is a sound instinctively designed to soothe, a primal lullaby without lyrics. The child's screams falter, his ragged gasps replacing the shrill cries, his wide, wet eyes fixing on her. A flicker of curiosity momentarily overriding his terror. The mother's arm, poised to strike, slowly lowers. Her rigid posture softens imperceptibly at first as she glances at the strange woman, and the unexpected, calming sound that has diffused the immediate crisis. The moment passes without a blow. Later, as the longhouse settles into the muted activity of evening, the mother, without a direct glance or overt acknowledgement, slides a small, hard crust of leftover bread towards her on the communal eating surface. It is coarse, nearly tasteless, a meager offering. But it is an offering nonetheless, a quiet, almost transactional recognition of a momentary easement, a small, tangible payment for an unexpected peace brokered not with words of wisdom, but with a presence that understood and a sound that soothed. This small, hard-won exchange, more significant than the crust itself, sparks a profound and unsettling thought. The world here cares little for the intricate workings of the mind, but perhaps, just perhaps, it has a desperate, unacknowledged need for a steady, calming presence, even one that cannot speak its name, charged with the smell of spilled ale and raw, unbridled aggression. A sudden, terrifying bellow tears through the communal space, followed by the crash of a dropped tankard and the scrape of a bench. Her head snaps up. A man, burly and wild-eyed, has erupted into a fit of rage. He's a berserker. She recognizes the term from her faint historical knowledge. A warrior known for entering a trance-like fury. His face is contorted, muscles corded, and he's flailing his arms, knocking over whatever is in his path. Others in the longhouse recoil, their faces grim, a mix of apprehension and grudging respect. This is not mere anger, it's an explosion, a force of nature. Her therapist's instinct, honed over years of crisis intervention, is to assess, to de-escalate, to seek the trigger, to find the underlying pain. But here, the rules are different. This isn't a modern patient in a carefully controlled room. This is a man, powerful and unpredictable, in a state of primal fury, respected and feared in equal measure by his peers. There is no talking him down. Her modern assumptions about managing anger through communication and emotional processing feel utterly ridiculous in the face of this raw, untamed power. To approach him, to speak, to even gesture in a way she normally would, could be suicidal. She stands frozen, observing, a knot of fear in her stomach. But beneath the fear, her analytical mind is whirring. She watches his body language, the rapid, shallow breaths, the dilated pupils, the sheer, explosive energy. She sees how others react. They give him space, their gazes cautious, but they don't intervene directly, not yet. This rage, she realizes, serves a purpose here, terrifying as it is. It's a tool of war, a display of strength, a necessary component of their warrior culture. But even within this culture, there's a flicker of unease, a sense that this power, while revered, is also dangerous, even to themselves. She sees the subtle, nervous glances shared between the other men. She remembers a specific technique from her training: grounding, deep breathing, self-soothing. Not for the berserker, but for his effect on the others, and perhaps for his eventual cooldown. The rage is an overwhelming storm, but storms eventually pass. She starts to think about patterns, about the physiological responses to extreme stress. Could there be a way, a non-verbal method, to nudge him back from the precipice? Her skills as a therapist, so useless in direct interaction, might find a backdoor, an indirect way to influence the emotional environment around him, or even, eventually, his own internal storm. This week has shown her that while modern therapeutic language is irrelevant, the underlying human physiology of emotion, of rage and calm, might just be a universal language she could learn to speak. Finds herself drawn closer to its glowing embers, a silent, almost magnetic pull. She is no longer relegated to the colder, draftier edges of the communal space. A subtle shift has occurred, a quiet, unspoken acknowledgement that allows her a small, coveted space among the families gathered around the flickering light. The raw wood of the floor, smoothed by countless feet, feels less alien beneath her. Her presence, once met with almost universal wariness, is now tolerated, sometimes even ignored. This small concession, she understands, is the fragile sprout of tentative trust, born from moments like her soothing presence during the child's outburst last week. She hasn't spoken a single word in their tongue, but her quiet demeanor, her non-threatening posture, and perhaps that intuitive calming hum have carved out a tiny niche for her. As a therapist, she's intimately familiar with the slow, delicate dance of building rapport. But here, it's a silent ballet of observation and subtle signaling, a desperate attempt to show she means no harm. Evenings around the hearth are a core ritual. The older men and women, their faces shadowed and illuminated by the dancing flames, begin to speak in low, rhythmic tones, their voices weaving tales. These are the sagas she recognizes from her historical knowledge, the oral histories and myths that bind this people together. She doesn't understand the words, but she watches the faces of the listeners, the way their expressions shift from solemnity to awe, from a sharp intake of breath to a slow, knowing nod. She sees the collective emotional journey they embark on, the shared understanding cemented by these ancient narratives. Her modern mind observes this as a form of communal therapy, a powerful way to process shared experiences, instill values, and strengthen identity, all without a single session. Her modern assumption that complex emotional processing requires verbal articulation is profoundly challenged here. The sagas are not about individual analysis, but about collective meaning. They are stories of heroes and battles, of gods and fate, of triumphs and sorrows that belong to everyone. She sees the quiet comfort and reassurance they bring, a balm to the harsh realities of their existence. It's a fundamental reminder that human beings find meaning, and thus solace, in shared narratives, regardless of the era or the sophistication of the language used to tell them. Her body feels less acutely alien to this world now. The persistent chill has become a dull thrum beneath her skin, rather than a shocking intrusion. Her hunger, while still present, is less gnawing, as she's learned to eat what is offered with less hesitation. This week has shown her that while the spoken word might be a barrier, the fundamental human need for connection, for shared stories, and for a sense of belonging is a language understood universally. The warmth of the hearth, both literal and metaphorical, is slowly thawing the deep isolation she felt, an unexpected comfort found in the heart of this ancient, unyielding world. The yeasty tang of ale, usually a comforting background note in the longhouse, suddenly sharpens as a heavy wooden tankard clatters to the floor, spilling its contents in a dark, rapidly spreading pool across the packed earth. A collective groan rises from the men gathered nearby, followed by a flurry of gruff, unintelligible words. The air crackles with momentary irritation, a brief, sharp tension. One of the men, large and bearded, looks down at the mess, his face initially contorted in a scowl of annoyance. Her therapist's mind, accustomed to interpreting the subtle shifts in group dynamics, notes the immediate emotional spike. This isn't a fight, but a minor misfortune that could easily escalate into a deeper frustration in a world where waste is a luxury. She watches him, anticipating the familiar anger, perhaps a shove or a harsh word for the clumsy hand responsible. But then, unexpectedly, a low rumble starts in the bearded man's chest. It isn't anger. It builds, a rich, guttural sound, and then erupts into a booming, uninhibited laugh that shakes his entire frame. The sound is raw, hearty, brimming, with a sudden, robust amusement at the absurdity of the moment. The others around him, initially tense, quickly follow suit. Their gruff complaints dissolve into a chorus of deep, belly laughs, slaps on backs, and teasing jabs. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated human mirth, resonating through the smoky air. Caught off guard by the unexpected pivot from frustration to mirth, something within her, an innate human response that transcends language, breaks through her weeks of guarded silence. A genuine, uncalculated laugh escapes her own lips. Not a polite titter, but a raw, involuntary sound, deep and free, mirroring the joyous cacophony around her. The bearded man, still shaking with laughter, turns his head and catches her eye. For the first time, his gaze holds no wariness, no suspicion, no blankness. Instead, a crinkling at the corners of his eyes, a momentary softening of his usually stern features, acknowledges her. He gestures with a large hand, a simple, inclusive flick of the wrist that seems to say, "You understand this too." Her modern assumptions about sophisticated humor or witty banter are irrelevant here. This shared moment is primal, an acknowledgement of the universal human capacity to find light in small imperfections, to release tension through pure, unthinking joy, her ability to connect, not through words or complex emotional analysis, but through a genuine, spontaneous human reaction, has bridged a gap that weeks of observation could not. The feeling is like a sudden, unexpected warmth spreading through her chest, a profound relief from the chill of isolation. Her body, accustomed to the hardness of this existence, feels a momentary lightness. This week has shown her that even in the most alien of worlds, the simplest, most primal human responses, like a shared laugh over spilled ale, can forge a connection more powerful than any carefully constructed therapeutic dialogue. Sometimes, therapy isn't about solving a problem, but simply about sharing a moment. The sharp, metallic tang of blood from a fresh kill, usually a sign of sustenance, hangs heavy in the air this week, mixing with the pervasive wood smoke and a growing, palpable unrest. A familiar tension begins to coil in the communal space. The same burly berserker she observed weeks ago is agitated again, his breaths growing shallow and rapid, his large hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. He paces near the hearth, his heavy boots thudding against the packed earth, each step resonating with his mounting internal storm. Others in the longhouse instinctively shift away, their movements cautious, their gazes averted but aware. Her therapist's instincts, now more accustomed to this brutal world, recognize the pre-eruption signs with an unnerving clarity. This is a man on the brink, his physiology screaming for release. Her modern training floods her mind, identifying triggers, de-escalation techniques, the power of distraction and grounding. But here, language is still a wall, and a direct approach could be dangerous. She understands now that her modern assumption that all anger should be openly processed is not only impractical, but potentially fatal in this context. Instead, the goal is to prevent the destructive explosion, to find a different outlet, or a way to interrupt the escalating cycle. She slowly, deliberately, reaches for a small piece of animal hide, already softened by continuous handling. Her fingers begin a quiet, rhythmic movement, stroking the fur. A simple, repetitive action. Simultaneously, she lets out a low, steady hum, a sound almost swallowed by the ambient noise of the longhouse, but persistent. It is a subtle, non-verbal suggestion, a gentle, almost imperceptible invitation for his agitated mind to find a different anchor, a different rhythm than the one driving him towards fury. It's a risk, a whisper of intervention in a world that thrives on overt action. She does not look directly at him, but her peripheral vision is locked onto his tightening jaw, his agitated movements. He continues to pace, but then, slowly, his steps begin to falter. His eyes, though still wild, dart towards the source of the soft, continuous hum, towards the repetitive motion of her hands. It's not recognition, not understanding of her intent, but a primal, almost instinctual response to a pattern. A small break in the chaotic buildup of his own inner world. His breathing, though still heavy, becomes slightly less erratic. The clenching of his hands eases just a fraction. The tension in the longhouse, thick moments before, perceptibly thins. The eruption does not happen. The moment passes. The rage recedes without its destructive peak, leaving behind a surprising, fragile calm. It is a tiny, crucial triumph, a testament to the universal power of rhythm and a steady presence. This week, she learned that sometimes the most profound therapeutic work is not about understanding the asterisk, why asterisk, but simply about gently guiding the asterisk, how asterisk of human regulation, even across the vast chasm of time and culture. The constant notes, the murmur of many voices, and the rhythmic clack of a spindle has ceased to be an overwhelming cacophony. Instead, this week, it has settled into a deep, recognizable hum, the very heartbeat of her new existence. The pervasive scent of wood smoke, old leather, and human presence is no longer an assault, but the smell of home, however temporary and unchosen. She finds herself navigating the crowded interior with a new, almost unconscious grace. Her body, once stiff and hesitant, now anticipates the movements of others, subtly shifting her weight, turning her shoulder just so, to avoid collision in the bustling lanes between sleeping platforms and cooking fires. Her therapist's observant eye, once frantic to decode, now registers the flow of activity with a quiet understanding. She sees the women moving with purpose, tending the simmering pot, patching furs, or braiding hair. She notes the men sharpening tools, repairing fishing nets, or simply resting, their gazes often distant, turned inward. She recognizes the quick, sharp glances exchanged, the knowing nods, the unspoken signals that guide their communal life. Her modern assumptions about the need for privacy and personal space have completely eroded. The very concept feels like a strange, forgotten luxury. Here, individual lives are woven into the tight fabric of the community, an inescapable, breathing entity where every action is observed and every presence felt. She has learned to anticipate the needs of the hearth, recognizing when more wood is required or when a child needs a steadying hand. Her hands, rough and strong, now perform tasks with a growing efficiency, turning hides to dry, carefully separating dried fish, or assisting with the preparation of root vegetables. This practical engagement, devoid of language but rich in shared effort, is slowly weaving her into the communal tapestry. She's no longer just an observer, but a participant, albeit a quiet one. Her ability to read nonverbal cues, a cornerstone of her former profession, serves her well here, allowing her to anticipate moods, avoid potential friction, and even offer a small, reassuring pat to a fussy child without needing a single word. Her skills aren't about fixing problems with talk, but about existing harmoniously within a dynamic system. She has found that her own calm, steady presence, a learned trait from her therapy practice, acts as a subtle anchor in the often volatile energy of the longhouse. She is a quiet counterpoint to the more boisterous personalities, a steady, non-reactive presence that some, perhaps unconsciously, find grounding. The children, especially, are less wary, sometimes brushing past her without fear, their brief touch a fleeting connection. This week, she realizes, the longhouse, once a terrifying symbol of her displacement, has begun to transform. It is still hard, still demanding, but it is no longer utterly alien. It has become a complex, living organism, and she, in some small way, is now a part of its rhythm. Her own concept of self is no longer singular, but inextricably linked to the ebb and flow of this collective existence. The scent of salt and fish is now a familiar feel beneath her fingertips. This week, she spends hours with the other women, her hands moving with a growing, albeit still slower, proficiency, tracing the intricate patterns of torn netting, carefully weaving new strands to repair the vital tools of their existence. The longhouse hums with a different kind of quiet, a shared silence born of focused concentration. It's not an empty silence, but one thick with the soft scrape of needles, the subtle sighs of effort, and the gentle creak of the wooden frames holding the nets taut. Her modern mind, once craving intellectual stimulation and verbal exchange, now finds a deep, unexpected rhythm in this repetitive, manual labor. As a therapist, she understood the power of shared activity, of parallel play in building connection, but she never imagined it could transcend language and centuries. Here, side by side with women whose names she still barely grasps, whose lives are worlds away from her own, a deep, unspoken bond is solidifying. She watches their hands, strong and swift, and mimics their movements, learning the specific knot for a tear, the precise tension needed. There are no words, no explanations, just a patient demonstration, a nod of encouragement when she gets it right, a gentle correction when she errs. Her modern assumption that significant relationships require deep conversation and explicit emotional sharing has gradually dissolved. Here, solidarity is forged in the quiet effort of shared tasks, in the unspoken understanding that each mended net, each prepared meal, each warm hearth is a collective victory against a harsh world. When a difficult knot resists her efforts, a hand, weathered and strong, might reach over and deftly untangle it without a word. A gesture of quiet assistance that speaks volumes. This is a form of communication, she realizes, more profound than any she encountered in her structured sessions, rooted in mutual need and practical support. She has begun to notice subtle shifts in the women's demeanor towards her. The wary glances have softened into casual observation. Sometimes a tired sigh or a gentle hum of a folk song will escape one of them. A shared moment of simple presence that requires no translation. Her ability to simply be present, to offer a calm, focused energy to the task, aligns with her therapeutic training, even if the context is utterly alien. Her body has adapted further, her fingers now more nimble with the coarse threads, her back less aching from the long hours bent over the nets. The repetitive motion, once tedious, has become almost meditative, a space where her racing modern thoughts can finally quiet, finding a surprising peace in the ancient rhythm of creation and repair. This week, the deep, silent work of mending nets has mended something within her too. It has shown her that belonging isn't always loud or verbally explicit. Sometimes it's woven, thread by careful thread, in the quiet, shared effort of survival. The sharp, clean scent of iron, freshly forged and then cooled in water, hangs around the settlement's smithy this week, mingling with the ever-present wood smoke. It's a smell of purposeful creation, of power. She watches the men practice their combat, their heavy axes and shields clashing in rhythmic, brutal training. A raw, guttural roar erupts from one of the warriors, a powerful sound that vibrates through the very ground. It's not a cry of pain, but of challenge, of assertion, a deep-seated expression of strength and readiness for battle. Her therapist's mind, once conditioned to interpret such an outburst as uncontrolled aggression, now registers something subtly different. This week, she perceives the roar not as a symptom of dysfunction to be managed, but as a deliberate, culturally sanctioned expression of fierce honor. It's a declaration of intent, a communication of courage and loyalty to one's kin and community. Her modern assumptions about anger management, about channeling aggressive impulses into healthier outlets, are completely recalibrated. Here, this controlled, ritualized aggression serves a vital social and defensive function. It is a necessary component of their identity, a practiced art of survival. She observes the reactions of the other warriors. They don't shy away. They respond with their own shouts, their own forceful movements, mirroring the intensity. There is an unspoken understanding, a shared language of strength and purpose. The roar is not random. It's a key part of their preparation for raiding and defense, for protecting their homes and families. It binds them, a communal expression of their collective will. Her modern understanding of individual emotional expression gives way to a perception of collective emotional output, a powerful display that reinforces group cohesion and intimidation. Her own body, though not participating in the combat, resonates with the power of these displays. The tension in her shoulders, the slight clenching of her jaw, are involuntary responses to the sheer force of their movements and sounds. Yet, beneath the instinctive fear, there's a growing appreciation for the discipline embedded in their ferocity, the skill in their savage dances. She notices the calm determination in their eyes before the roar, the focused intensity, and the almost meditative exhaustion that follows a strenuous training session. It is a world of extremes, where peace is often born from the readiness for violence. This week has profoundly shifted her perception of anger and aggression. What she once saw as purely destructive, she now understands can be a powerful, even honorable, force for protection and survival within a specific cultural context. Her role as a therapist is not to eliminate this primal energy, but to perhaps, someday, help them navigate its edges. The warrior's roar, once terrifying, has revealed itself as a complex statement of identity and purpose, a deep truth she is only now beginning to comprehend. The scent of the salty fjord air, often biting and cold, this week carries a different note, a crisp freshness that settles deep in her lungs. She finds herself drawn away from the familiar confines of the longhouse, seeking a rare moment of quiet near the water's edge. The rhythmic lapping of the waves against the shore is a soothing balm to her senses, a constant, ancient whisper. As the sun begins its slow descent, painting the vast, open sky above the mountains and the dark, reflecting water of the fjord, a breathtaking spectacle unfolds. Streaks of fiery orange, deep crimson, and soft violet bleed across the horizon, igniting the clouds with an ethereal glow. The rugged peaks, once harsh and imposing, are silhouetted in a majestic purple, standing guard over the tranquil water. It's a beauty so profound, so utterly untouched by human hand, that it stills her racing thoughts and silences the constant hum of her anxieties. This is a landscape that demands respect, not just for its brutality, but for its sheer, unyielding grandeur. Her modern mind, accustomed to manufactured beauty and curated experiences, is utterly unprepared for the raw, untamed majesty of this natural world. Her therapist's perspective, often focused on internal landscapes and human-made distress, expands dramatically. Here, in the face of such immense, natural splendor, her problems, and even the larger struggles of the community, seem both immense and strangely minuscule. The sheer scale of the world, the enduring power of nature, offers a different kind of solace. It's not a solution to her predicament, but a profound, almost spiritual grounding. She feels the cold spray of the fjord on her face, the rough stones beneath her worn boots, and she breathes in the vastness for a few precious moments. The fear, the hunger, the alienation recede, replaced by a strange, unexpected peace. Her modern assumptions about what constitutes a fulfilling life, often tied to comfort, convenience, and control, are fundamentally challenged by this raw encounter. Here, survival is paramount, but so too, implicitly, is this deep connection to the earth, the sky, the water. The people of this settlement, she realizes, live and die in the shadow of this magnificent, indifferent beauty. Their sagas are not just of battles, but of the sea, the land, the changing seasons. Their resilience is perhaps not just a choice, but a reflection of the enduring landscape they inhabit. As the last sliver of sun dips below the horizon, plunging the fjord into twilight, she feels a deep sense of connection, not to another person, but to the very fabric of this ancient world. The overwhelming beauty, the profound silence broken only by the waves, has offered a moment of unexpected grace. This week, she learns that even in the most challenging and foreign environments, moments of profound peace and connection to something larger than oneself are not just possible, but essential for the human spirit to endure. The harsh land can be beautiful, and in that paradox, she finds a flicker of hope. The air this week feels thick, not with smoke, but with unspoken words and rising frustration. It carries the sharp, almost metallic scent of brewing conflict, a low hum of tension that vibrates beneath the surface of everyday activities. Two younger men, their faces flushed, are locked in a heated discussion over the division of fishing gear. Their voices grow louder, their gestures more agitated, each refusing to yield. Hands clench, shoulders hunch, and the group around them slowly stiffens, anticipating the inevitable eruption. Her therapist's senses, now acutely attuned to the subtle shifts in group dynamics, register the escalation instantly. This is precisely the kind of low-level conflict that, left unchecked, can simmer and fester, eroding the fragile bonds of community, or worse, explode into violence. She knows the danger of direct intervention, especially without a common language. Her modern assumption that all parties desire resolution and are capable of rational negotiation is still being tested, but her growing understanding of their nonverbal cues offers a different path. She positions herself subtly, not in the direct line of conflict, but in the peripheral vision of both men. She adopts a posture of calm, open observation, her hands resting loosely in front of her. Then slowly, deliberately, she begins to move her head, gently turning it from one man to the other, making eye contact not with aggression, but with a steady, unwavering attentiveness. It's a silent, non-judgmental acknowledgement of each man's presence, a silent invitation for each to feel heard, even if by a stranger who doesn't understand their words. It's a fundamental therapeutic technique, reflective listening without the words. Her steady, back and forth gaze acts as a subtle mirror, prompting them, without explicit instruction, to look at each other, to acknowledge the other's existence, not just their argument. The effect isn't immediate, but a pause eventually descends upon their heated exchange. Their voices drop slightly, their agitated gestures soften. They haven't resolved the issue, but the immediate emotional temperature has cooled. The subtle shift in their energy is palpable. An elder, who had been watching with a grim expression, gives her a slow, almost imperceptible nod. It is a quiet gesture, but it fills her with an unexpected warmth, a profound sense of recognition. This small, indirect intervention, rooted in the very core of her profession, has not only prevented an escalation, but has allowed her to feel a genuine sense of purpose for the first time in this alien world. Her unique ability to observe, to reflect, to create a space for emotional regulation has finally found a concrete application. Her modern skills, once seemingly useless, have proven to be a subtle, powerful tool for managing the collective emotional landscape. This week, she felt truly seen asterisk, not just as a strange woman from another time, but as someone who could, in her own silent way, contribute to the fragile harmony of their existence. It's a feeling that resonates deep within her, a validation of her very being. It's different. It's not the practiced, fierce cry of a warrior in training. This is a sound torn from the depths of a man, ragged and raw, vibrating through the packed earth and rattling the very timbers of the dwelling. It's the berserker from weeks ago, but his fury is no longer a contained storm. It is an uncontrolled deluge. He's not just pacing, he's thrashing, his powerful body lurching against the sturdy wooden posts, sending tremors through the communal space. His fists, balled into massive weapons, pound against a storage chest, splintering the wood with each impact. His face is a mask of pure agony, contorted, muscles twitching, sweat beading on his brow despite the chill. His eyes, usually fierce and intimidating, are wide, bloodshot, and frantic. In their wild depths, amidst the chaos and the rage, she sees it. A desperate, unarticulated plea. It's the look of a soul drowning, not in external conflict, but in an internal torment he cannot escape. A profound helplessness that transcends the raw aggression. Her therapist's heart aches with an intensity she hasn't felt since arriving here. This isn't a display of strength or honor. It's a breakdown, a primal scream for help that he himself cannot utter. Her modern assumptions about psychological distress, about trauma and its manifestations, roar to life within her. She recognizes the symptoms of overwhelming emotional pain, perhaps from battle, from loss, from the sheer brutality of their existence. She knows how to approach this, how to offer grounding, how to create safety, how to help him voice the unvoiceable. But her knowledge is imprisoned by the language barrier, by the cultural chasm, and by the sheer physical danger he presents. Others in the longhouse have scattered, some shrinking into corners, others watching with a grim, weary resignation. Their faces hold a mixture of fear and a sad understanding. They seem to know this kind of fury, this destructive, internal battle, but they appear helpless to stop it, accustomed to letting it run its course, or perhaps even believing it to be a sign of the god's influence. They wait for it to burn itself out. She, however, cannot just wait. The deep, empathetic core of her profession screams for intervention. She stands frozen, a terrible conflict raging within her, the instinct to help, clashing with the brutal reality of her impotence. Her body trembles, not from cold, but from the raw emotional intensity of the scene, from the crushing weight of witnessing such profound suffering without the means to alleviate it. She feels the vibration of his impacts through the floor, a constant reminder of his inner turmoil. This week, she understands with chilling clarity that some pain is universal, that the human spirit can crack under pressure regardless of the century, and that sometimes the most desperate pleas are not spoken aloud, but screamed through uncontrolled fury, leaving the most skilled healer utterly, terrifyingly helpless. With the ever-present wood smoke, the splintered remains of the storage chest serve as a stark, physical reminder of the sheer, untamed power she witnessed. This week, the memory of his wild, desperate eyes haunts her quiet moments, fueling a relentless internal debate. Her professional mind, trained to mend broken minds and regulate volatile emotions, feels a profound, almost unbearable pull to intervene. She walks the longhouse, observing the warrior, now quieted, his face etched with a familiar weariness, his movements heavy. Her therapist's thoughts are a cascade of potential solutions, whispers of modern psychology echoing in her mind. Trigger identification asterisk. Coping mechanisms. Controlled release asterisk. She considers structured physical activity, like rhythmic drumming or intense, solitary exertion, as a way to channel the explosive energy. She envisions guiding him not through words, but through demonstration, perhaps by offering him a specific, non-destructive outlet for his internal storm when he feels it gathering. It's a dangerous thought, a solution born of her world, but one that could potentially save him, and perhaps others, from the destructive aftermath of his rage. But then, the chilling reality of her situation slams into her modern assumptions about anger, that it should be understood and managed for individual well-being, collide violently with the brutal, pragmatic world she inhabits. This man's fury, his berserker state, is not just a personal affliction. It is, in some ways, a revered, even necessary, component of his warrior identity and the community's defense. What if her intervention weakens him? What if anger management diminishes his ferocity in battle, leaving him or his kin vulnerable? Her knowledge, her professional toolkit, suddenly feels like a double-edged sword, capable of both healing and, unintentionally, harming. The ethical dilemma weighs heavily on her. Is it her place to fundamentally alter a man's temperament and potentially his cultural role in a society she barely understands? She, a healer of minds, contemplates subtly influencing a warrior's very nature, with no way to predict the ripple effect through this ancient world. The responsibility is immense, terrifying. She watches him, strong and formidable, and wonders if a more contained anger would truly serve him better in a world where survival often depends on the capacity for unbridled aggression. Her own body feels the tension of this moral struggle, a persistent knot in her stomach. The warmth of the hearth offers little comfort against the cold dread of potential unintended consequences. This week has confronted her with the profound, terrifying power of her own expertise, and the truly dangerous nature of wielding modern solutions in an ancient world that might not be ready or even willing to accept them. She holds the whisper of her knowledge, a potent and perilous secret, questioning if the desire to help can truly justify the risks of changing a world that is not her own. The lingering scent of wood smoke, usually a comfort, now seems to carry the heavy weight of her internal battle. She watches the berserker from a distance, observing his quiet moments, his strained interactions, the way his eyes still hold a haunted look even when calm. The splintered wood of the chest remains, a stark monument to his unmanaged pain, and to her own profound ethical quandary. Her therapist's mind is a relentless battlefield. On one side, the ingrained, almost primal urge to alleviate suffering, to use her skills to soothe the tormented soul she glimpsed in his wild eyes. Her modern training shouts at her, this is a person in distress. You have the tools to help. She envisions simple, physical methods, controlled breathing exercises, repetitive motions to ground him, a safe space for him to feel the emotions that overwhelm him, perhaps even teaching him to understand the physiological onset of his rage. These are not complex verbal therapies, but universal body-based techniques she believes could bring him peace. The suffering is immense, palpable, and she has the knowledge to ease it. On the other side, a chilling caution born of her time here, her modern assumptions about individual well-being and emotional regulation clash with the Viking concept of weird asterisk, of an unalterable destiny. She knows that berserkers, with their terrifying battle fury, hold a unique, fearsome place in their society. Their rage, while personally destructive, is also a powerful weapon, a defense for their community, perhaps even a gift from the gods in their worldview. What if her intervention, however well-intentioned, disrupts this destiny? What if a calmer berserker is a weaker warrior, unable to defend his kin when raiders approach? Her knowledge could alleviate suffering, but it could also inadvertently alter the course of battles, of lives, of history itself. The choice feels immense, burdened with unseen consequences. Her ability to reason, to plan, to anticipate outcomes, usually her strength, now paralyzes her. She sees the stern faces of the elders, the unwavering gaze of the other warriors, and she understands that their world is built on different metrics of strength and survival. Her path is not simply to heal an individual, but to potentially tamper with a delicate, ancient ecosystem of culture and conflict. The weight of this potential butterfly effect presses down on her, a cold, heavy stone in her gut. Her body feels the tension of this constant, internal debate. Sleep offers little respite, her dreams filled with clashing axes and the berserker's anguished cries. She finds herself retreating more often, seeking solitary moments near the fjord, where the vast, indifferent landscape mirrors the terrifying scale of her moral dilemma. This week has forced her to confront not just the limits of her profession in a foreign land, but the profound ethical responsibility that comes with possessing knowledge that can fundamentally reshape another person's fate, and perhaps the very destiny of an ancient world. The question lingers, sharp and persistent. Is it more ethical to disrupt destiny, or to stand by and witness immense suffering? A low thrum beneath the usual sounds of daily life. The scent of drying fish and smoldering peat is constant, but her own senses are heightened, focused. She watches the berserker, noticing the subtle tension in his jaw, the way his fingers sometimes twitch, betraying the restless energy beneath his calm exterior. The memory of his tormented eyes, the raw plea she glimpsed, continues to burn in her mind, finally tipping the scales of her ethical dilemma. The immense suffering outweighs the fear of unknown consequences. She decides to act, not with overt therapy, but with a whisper, a subtle planting of calm. Her therapist's plan is not to change his nature, but to offer him a tool, a moment of reprieve, a small anchor in the storm of his own mind. Her modern understanding of trauma and the nervous system dictates a non-verbal approach, one that bypasses language and cultural differences, reaching instead for the universal physiological responses to stress. She seeks an opportunity when he is isolated, yet still within the periphery of communal life, minimizing direct attention. She waits, observing the rhythm of his breathing, the way he carries his body. The moment arrives when he sits alone, mending a leather strap by the fading light near a side entrance, his brow furrowed in concentration, but his foot tapping a restless rhythm against the floor. Moving with deliberate slowness, she approaches, not directly, but to tend to a nearby task, sorting dried herbs. Her movements are calm, unhurried. Then, with a carefully calculated subtlety, she begins to tap her own thumb against her index finger. A quiet, consistent rhythm, barely audible above the longhouse sounds. It's a simple, repetitive movement, a grounding technique she's used countless times in her own world, a gentle invitation for an agitated nervous system to find a calmer rhythm. She doesn't look at him directly. Her gaze remains fixed on the herbs, but her peripheral vision registers the shift. The tapping of his foot falters, then stops. His head, imperceptibly, turns slightly in her direction, drawn by the new, steady pulse in the air. He doesn't understand her intent, but his agitated energy seems to catch on the rhythm. A silent, almost unconscious mirroring. His shoulders, previously tense, drop a fraction. His breathing deepens slowly, almost imperceptibly. He remains silent, focused on his leather strap. But the raw edge of his inner turmoil seems to have dulled, if only for a few moments. Her modern skills, once trapped, have found a subtle conduit, an almost invisible thread across centuries. She has planted a seed of calm, a tiny, almost imperceptible interruption in the cycle of his mounting stress. The act is small, perhaps unnoticed by anyone else, but for her, it is a profound, terrifying step into the unknown. Her body, once tense with indecision, now feels a fragile sense of purpose, a deep, resonant hum of having finally chosen to act. This week, she learned that intervention does not always have to be a loud pronouncement or a grand gesture. Sometimes it is a quiet word unspoken, a subtle rhythm offered, a brave and dangerous gamble on the universal capacity for peace. The local of roasted meat, a feast prepared for a returning hunting party, usually brings communal joy. But tonight, there's a subtle tension. She feels it as she moves, almost instinctively, around the longhouse, her body now navigating the space with a quiet efficiency. Her hand, calloused and strong, deftly serves a portion of fish to an elder, her movements becoming less clumsy, more purposeful. Her therapist's keen observation skills, now honed by months of silent immersion, notice the chieftain's gaze. He is a man of few words, his authority conveyed through presence and subtle commands. His eyes, usually scanning for threats or assessing resources, occasionally settle on her. It's not a hostile stare, nor one of simple curiosity anymore. There's a new quality to it, a prolonged, analytical look that makes the hair on her arms prickle. It's a gaze that holds a question, a weighing, a sensing of something new, something different asterisk in her quiet interventions. He doesn't understand the concepts of modern psychology, of emotional regulation, or the subtle physiological shifts she attempts to induce. But he understands power. He understands influence. He has likely observed the berserker's moments of calm after her quiet, rhythmic presence. He has witnessed the subtle de-escalation of arguments under her steady, reflective gaze. He is sensing a new kind of power, unsettling perhaps, because it is unseen, unspoken, and wielded by a woman from outside their traditional structures. Her modern assumptions about her interventions being private, subtle acts are being challenged by the chieftain's astute perception. In this world, any unexplained influence is a force to be reckoned with. Her quiet influence, once a personal triumph, now feels like a double-edged sword. She has sought to alleviate suffering, to bring a fragile calm, but in doing so, she has inadvertently established a new, almost shamanistic presence. The chieftain's gaze conveys this recognition. She is not just an extra pair of hands for daily chores. She is something more. Her ability to subtly shift emotional dynamics, a cornerstone of her profession, is being perceived as a nascent form of control, a power she hadn't consciously sought to project. Her body, though tired from the day's labor, feels a prickle of adrenaline under the chieftain's scrutiny. The warmth of the feast and the communal gathering do little to soothe the growing unease. This week has taught her that the butterfly effect of her modern skills extends beyond individual minds. It ripples through the very fabric of leadership and perception in this ancient society. She has begun to take root, but not as the therapist she knew. She is becoming something else, something potentially powerful and profoundly misunderstood. under the watchful, discerning eye of the chieftain. The responsibility now feels not just ethical, but political and utterly terrifying. The smell in the air this week, mingling with the earthy smell of damp forest. There's a raw, palpable tension, a hum of anticipation that isn't from daily chores. The warriors are gathered, axes gleaming, shields ready, their faces grim and set. A rival clan has been sighted. The air is thick with a primal readiness for battle. Her own heart pounds, a frantic drum against her ribs. Her gaze instinctively finds the berserker. He stands among his comrades, his large frame stoic, axe held loosely in his hand. She watches his breathing, his jaw, the usual indicators of his escalating fury. She waits, anticipating the familiar, terrifying roar that usually precedes their charge. The sound that strikes fear into enemies and galvanizes allies. But the roar does not come, an unnerving silence, deep and profound, hangs where his visceral cry should be. Only the subtle clinking of mail and the rhythmic thud of their marching boots break the stillness as the war party moves out of the settlement. Her therapist's mind is a kaleidoscope of conflicting emotions. A part of her feels a strange, cold relief. His suffering, that raw internal agony she had witnessed, is perhaps lessened. He is not lost to the all-consuming madness, but another part, a more primal, survival-focused part, feels a profound unease. Her modern assumptions about the benefits of emotional regulation collide with the brutal realities of Viking combat. Has her subtle intervention, her quiet tapping, her grounding hum, dulled his edge? Has she unwittingly altered a critical component of his warrior prowess, potentially compromising his safety and that of his kin? The chieftain's earlier, analytical gaze flashes in her mind, a silent judgment. The battle, when sounds of it eventually drift back on the wind, is different. There are shouts, yes, the clash of steel, the screams of men, but the specific, terrifying roar that she has come to associate with their berserkers' charge, the sound that instilled fear and spurred his allies, is conspicuously absent. She does not know the outcome, cannot see the fight, but the silence where that primal sound should be feels heavy, pregnant with unforeseen consequences. It's an altered battle, a ripple in the fabric of their reality. Her own body is tense, rigid with anxiety, the cold seep of fear chilling her to the bone. She paces the longhouse, her hands clenching, the dull ache of her muscles forgotten in the grip of this new terror. She who has spent her life seeking to bring peace and understanding has potentially unleashed a chaotic chain of events in a world where such changes are not mere therapeutic breakthroughs, but matters of life and death. This week has forced her to confront the profound, irreversible impact of her actions, a terrifying manifestation of the butterfly effect. The unnerving silence of the berserkers, unroared fury echoes in her mind, a chilling testament to the unknown consequences of tampering with destiny. Even with the best intentions, the pile of unwashed bodies and lingering fear permeates the longhouse this week, mixing with the smoke and stale food. The returning warriors are not triumphant. Their steps are heavy, their faces grim, and several bear fresh, crude bandages. The sounds are subdued, the usual boisterous storytelling replaced by quiet murmurs and the mournful cries of a few women. The atmosphere is thick with a collective sorrow and a palpable unease. Her gaze, sharpened by months of intense observation, follows the berserker. He walks with a slight limp, a fresh cut on his arm, but his expression is devoid of the usual post-battle intensity, the lingering ferocity she has seen in others. Instead, his eyes hold a quiet, almost defeated look. She observes the subtle shifts in social dynamics around him. Other warriors, usually quick to offer a hearty slap on the back or a gruff word of camaraderie, now give him a wider berth. Their glances are less respectful, more questioning, sometimes even tinged with a subtle, uncomfortable pity. The usual hierarchical dance of dominance and deference seems to have frayed around him. Her therapist's understanding of group dynamics and social roles screams at her. His altered state, his unroared fury, has changed his standing. Her modern assumption that reducing aggression would lead to positive outcomes crashes against the harsh rocks of this ancient reality. Here, controlled rage was not a flaw to be corrected, but a core component of his perceived strength, his utility to the clan. By subtly diminishing that, she has not only impacted him, but the intricate web of relationships that define his place in the community. The subtle thread of social order is unraveling, and she is terrifyingly aware that her unseen hand has pulled at a crucial knot. The chieftain, too, has been observing. His gaze, when it falls on the berserker, is long and troubled, a silent calculation of loss and altered power. When his eyes flick towards her, there's no longer curiosity, but a chilling assessment, a cold, hard judgment that pierces through her. He doesn't blame her with words, but his eyes speak volumes, implicitly linking her presence to the unsettling shift in their warrior's spirit, and by extension, to their recent, less than victorious encounter. Her body feels the cold weight of responsibility, a tightness in her chest that has nothing to do with the physical strain of her daily life. The communal mourning, the quiet anger, the strained interactions, it all feels heavier, more personal. She is no longer just an anonymous observer. She is an unwitting participant, an active force in reshaping this world, with unpredictable and potentially disastrous consequences. This week has shown her that the delicate balance of an ancient society is easily disturbed, and that her good intentions, viewed through the lens of a different culture, can be perceived as an unsettling, even dangerous, form of weakness. The threads of fate, she realizes, are not so easily rewoven once they begin to unravel. A subtle tension that permeates the longhouse this week, the crackle of the hearth, the low murmur of voices, all seem muted, heavy with the weight of unforeseen outcomes. She watches the berserker, his movements still slightly hesitant, his gaze often downcast. The other warriors, still healing from their recent, less than victorious skirmish, cast him sidelong glances, a mixture of disappointment and thinly veiled resentment. Her therapist's analytical mind is in overdrive, dissecting the social fallout, her modern assumptions about individual well-being, and the universal good of reducing aggression are being violently dismantled by the unfolding reality. She had sought to alleviate his suffering, to bring him a measure of peace, but instead, she has unknowingly undermined his social standing, his perceived strength, and perhaps even the collective morale of the fighting force. The chain of events, from her subtle tapping to the subdued battle, feels like a direct, undeniable line of cause and effect, a terrifying manifestation of her unintended power. The chieftain's eyes, when they meet hers across the smoky air, are no longer merely curious or assessing. They hold a deep, unreadable intensity, a quiet accusation. There's no anger, no overt threat, but a profound understanding that a delicate balance has been upset, and that she, the silent interloper, is the catalyst. Her hidden influence, once a subtle triumph, now feels like a profound burden, a dangerous secret that has yielded unexpected and detrimental consequences. She understands that in this society, personal temperament is intrinsically linked to communal survival, and to alter one is to impact the other, sometimes catastrophically. The weight of this unforeseen impact presses down on her, a constant, dull ache in her chest. She moves through her days with a growing unease, every gesture, every silent interaction, feeling fraught with potential further disruption. She watches the women prepare meals with a grim determination. The men repair their weapons with a new, quiet intensity, and she senses a subtle shift in the communal rhythm, a tightening, a withdrawal. She is no longer just a tolerated stranger. She is a variable, a force that has introduced an element of uncertainty into their world. Her body, though resilient to the physical demands, feels a new kind of exhaustion, a mental and emotional fatigue born of profound regret and fear. The rough fabric of her tunic, the taste of coarse food, the chill of the air, all these familiar sensations are now imbued with a sense of dread. This week, she grapples not just with the consequences of her actions, but with the terrifying realization that her power, though subtle and well-intentioned, is far more potent and destructive than she could have ever imagined in this ancient, unyielding world. Her greatest fear is no longer her own survival, but the lasting, negative impact she might have on the lives of these people. The signals the deepening of autumn this week, a scent that normally brings a sense of familiar cycle. But today, it's overshadowed by a different kind of shift, a palpable coolness in the longhouse air. She moves about her chores, her hands efficiently cleaning dried fish, her body accustomed to the rhythm of labor. Yet, her movements feel heavier, weighed down by an invisible force. Her gaze drifts to the woman who often sat beside her while mending nets, the one who had offered her the stale crust of bread weeks ago, the one whose quiet nods and occasional soft hum had formed a fragile bridge of connection. This woman, whose name she still doesn't know in their tongue, but whom she considers a tentative friend, now seems different. Her head is turned away more often. Her shoulders are slightly hunched, her movements less open when their eyes do meet. It's not with the usual casual acceptance, but with a new, subtle question, a hint of wariness that stings more deeply than any open hostility. Her therapist's understanding of social bonds and trust tells her that this new distance is a direct consequence of her secretive actions. While her interventions were subtle, they were also clandestine, unexplained, in a community built on transparency of intent and shared understanding. Her mysterious influence, however well-intentioned, breeds suspicion. Her modern assumption that doing good always translates into positive social outcomes is once again disproven. Here, the unknown is often equated with threat, and her quiet power, unarticulated and unexplained, is now generating a rift. The chieftain's cold, assessing gaze echoes in her mind, amplifying the feeling of growing isolation. She has sought to help, to ease suffering, to gently guide a volatile mind. But in doing so, she has carved out a new kind of separateness for herself. The price of her influence, she realizes, is not just the potential for unintended consequences in battle, but the erosion of the very human connections she had tentatively begun to forge. The subtle shifting of her friend's body away from her, the averted gaze, the slight stiffening of her posture, these non-verbal cues are a powerful, heartbreaking language of a bond unraveling. Her body feels a chill that the longhouse fire cannot dispel, an internal cold born of profound loneliness. The rough wool of her tunic, once a symbol of adaptation, now feels like a barrier, separating her from the communal warmth. She continues her tasks, her movements automatic, but the joy in the shared labor has diminished, replaced by a dull ache of isolation. This week, she understands that the cost of her quiet power is not just abstract ethical dilemmas, but the tangible, painful loss of nascent human connection. The subtle distance in her friends' eyes speaks volumes, confirming that even the smallest, most well-meaning secrets can carve a deep, unfillable chasm between people. The biting scent of the sea, sharp and relentless, now carries the faint, unsettling whiff of an approaching storm this week. It whips through the longhouse, rattling the animal hide shutters and stirring the embers of the hearth. There's a palpable tension in the air, a collective watchfulness as the community prepares for harsher weather. She moves with a quiet purpose, helping to secure loose tools outside, her hands chafed and strong against the rough wood, her movements more instinctive than deliberate. The shifts in the longhouse dynamics are no longer subtle. The berserker, once a figure of awe and fear, is now often overlooked, sometimes even actively excluded from the warrior's discussions. His previous outbursts, however destructive, were understood. His current, quieter demeanor, however, is a mystery, a weakness they cannot comprehend or integrate. Her modern assumption that emotional stability is universally valued is utterly shattered. Here, stability, if it comes at the cost of a warrior's ferocity, is a detriment, a potential liability to the clan. The distance she feels from her tentative friend has deepened, a silent, painful acknowledgement of her unresolved actions. Her therapist's mind, once quick to justify her interventions as an act of compassion, now grapples with the profound weight of her responsibility. She understands that her choice, driven by a modern ethical framework, has altered the currents of their lives, and not entirely for the better in their terms. She sees the chieftain's stern gaze, not as an accusation, but as a statement of fact. She has influenced their world, and she must now bear the weight of that influence. There is no going back, no undoing the ripple effect. The damage, or perhaps just the change, is done. She continues her quiet work, helping the women with the laborious tasks of winter preparation. Salting more fish, stacking firewood, securing the longhouse. Her body aches with the familiar strain, but it is the mental burden that truly saps her strength. She visualizes the intricate web of their society, the delicate balance of roles and expectations, and recognizes how her singular action, however small, has tugged at the very threads of that web. Her power, once a source of professional pride, now feels like a terrifying force, capable of unintentional destruction. As the wind howls outside, pressing against the sturdy walls of the longhouse, she huddles closer to the fire. The warmth, a small comfort against the deep chill of her realization. The noise of the storm, the distant crash of waves, mimics the tumultuous landscape of her own conscience. This week, she has moved beyond simply observing the consequences of her actions. She has fully, viscerally accepted the burden of responsibility for the altered currents of their lives. It's a terrifying, lonely acceptance, a profound understanding that some choices, made with the best intentions, carry an unforeseen, irreversible price that pushes back against the bitter chill that seeps through the thick walls. She sits near the flames, her hands busy scraping a deer hide, her movements now fluid and practiced. The familiar ache in her shoulders is a testament to her ongoing physical adaptation. Her gaze, accustomed to scanning for shifts in the longhouse, finds the berserker. He too is near the fire, a little closer than usual, his large frame hunched slightly. His eyes are not wild, not tormented, but heavy, contemplative. He's carving a small wooden figure, his calloused thumbs slowly shaping the rough wood. The air around him still holds a faint echo of his former volatility, a tension that still keeps others at a respectful distance, a quiet consequence of her intervention. As she reaches for a piece of hide that has slid too close to the flames, her hand brushes against his. It's an accidental touch, brief and startling. She stiffens, her heart giving a sudden, anxious thump. But he doesn't recoil. Instead, his carving pauses. Slowly, he lifts his head, and his gaze meets hers across the flickering firelight. It's a long, direct look, devoid of anger or suspicion. There's no judgment, no resentment, only a profound, silent understanding. In his eyes, she sees a flicker of shared experience, a recognition that transcends the chasm of language and culture. It is a fierce, unexpected bond forging itself in the crucible of their intertwined fates. Her therapist's mind registers the power of this nonverbal exchange. It's a primal connection, an acknowledgement of mutual vulnerability, and perhaps a silent thanks for the unexpected calm she has brought him, even at the cost of his former identity. Her modern assumptions about rapport building, about the need for verbal agreement and shared narratives, are refined by this raw, undeniable moment. Sometimes, connection is forged in the silent recognition of one's soul by another, across time, across understanding, simply by the shared warmth of a fire. Her body, usually guarded, feels a strange loosening, a release of tension she hadn't realized she was holding. The warmth from the fire feels more profound, seeping not just into her skin, but into the lonely core of her being. The unexpected bond, forged in a shared, wordless moment by the fire, offers a flicker of hope, a profound counterpoint to the growing unease she has carried. This week has shown her that even amidst the unforeseen consequences of her actions, deep human connection can still arise, unexpected and powerful, a testament to the enduring capacity of the human spirit to find allies, even in the most unlikely of places and circumstances. The chill damp air of the longhouse, heavy with the scent of wood smoke and old furs, seems to amplify the internal cacophony she feels this week. The familiar sounds of daily life, the crackle of the hearth, the low murmur of voices, the scrape of tools, now feel like a thin veil over a profound inner conflict. She moves through her chores, her hands efficiently shaping a clay pot for storage, her body performing tasks with an almost automatic competence that belies the turmoil raging in her mind. Her therapist's mind is pulled in two opposing directions. On one side, the dreamlike past, the crisp, clean lines of her modern apartment, the hum of electricity, the gentle clink of ceramic coffee mugs, the complex, articulate conversations with her clients. These memories, once so vivid, now feel distant, like fragments of a fading dream. Less real than the rough wool against her skin or the earthy scent of the longhouse. Her modern assumptions about comfort, progress, and psychological nuance seem like abstractions, distant echoes from a life that might never have been. On the other side, the vibrant, tangible present, the visceral reality of hunger, the biting cold, the fierce, unyielding faces of the people around her, the raw beauty of the fjord, the guttural sounds she's beginning to interpret, the shared glance with the berserker that spoke volumes. This world, once terrifyingly alien, has sunk its teeth into her. Her hands are calloused, her muscles strong, her senses attuned to the subtle shifts in weather and human emotion. This life, with all its brutality and raw beauty, feels utterly, undeniably real, demanding her full, conscious presence. The conflict within her is profound. She is torn between two realities, each claiming a part of her soul. The ghost of her modern identity whispers to her, reminding her of what she's lost, of the comfort and familiarity she once knew. But the vibrant, demanding present screams for her attention, forging her into something new, something tougher, something more primal. Her ability to analyze, to introspect, once her greatest professional strength, now serves to highlight the chasm within her, making the emotional schism even more acute. Her body feels the tension of this profound conflict, a persistent ache behind her eyes, a constant knot in her stomach. Sleep offers little escape, her dreams a confused blur of modern chrome and ancient wood, of soft sheets and rough furs. She holds the clay pot, feeling its cool, damp earthiness, grounding herself in the physical reality of this present. This week, she understands that adaptation is not just about physical survival. It is a profound internal transformation, a battle for the very core of her identity. She is no longer just a person from the past in the present, but a living bridge between two worlds, struggling to reconcile the dreamlike echo of who she was with the vibrant, demanding truth of who she is becoming. clean scent of frost-touched pine needles, carried on a brisk wind, now defines the air outside the longhouse this week. Inside, the comforting scent of baked bread, a rare treat, mingles with the ever-present wood smoke. There's a subtle shift in the communal energy, a sense of a shared journey through the deepening winter. She finds herself moving with a quiet confidence, her steps sure on the packed earth, her body attuned to the rhythms of daily life, her hands, no longer just performing tasks, are now creating. She's learning to weave simple baskets from willow branches, her fingers growing deft with the intricate patterns. It's a skill she never imagined possessing, a tactile, repetitive act that grounds her in the tangible present. Her therapist's analytical mind, once consumed by the dilemma of intervention, now finds a different kind of purpose in this quiet creation. Each woven strand, each knot tied, feels like a deliberate choice, a small act of building something, brick by emotional brick, amidst the ancient, wild beauty of this land. The women around her, initially wary, now occasionally offer a small, encouraging nod as she works. The quiet camaraderie of shared labor, forged over weeks of mending nets and preparing food, has deepened into a fragile, unspoken acceptance. The berserker, too, sometimes sits near her, his own hands busy with carving, his presence a quiet, steadying force. There are no words, no explicit declarations, but in the shared rhythm of their hands, in the subtle exchange of glances, a new tapestry of connection is slowly, painstakingly being woven. Her modern assumptions about the linearity of life, about a clear path forward, have dissolved. Instead, she finds herself embracing the cyclical nature of their existence, the constant ebb and flow of challenge and quiet resilience. Her therapy skills, once confined to an office, are now finding unexpected applications in this elemental world. Her steady presence, her ability to observe without judgment, her capacity for non-verbal comfort are becoming intrinsic parts of her new role, not just as a survivor, but as a subtle anchor in the community. She offers no grand solutions, no profound insights, but simply a calm, consistent energy that seems to ripple outward, influencing the small moments of tension and anxiety. She is building a life here, not with the blueprints of her past, but with the raw materials of this present. Her body, hardened by labor and the relentless cold, feels a deep, enduring strength. The faint scent of pine resin on her fingers, the rough texture of the woven willow, are markers of her tangible connection to this land. This week, she finds herself less burdened by the internal conflict of past and present. Instead, a profound sense of being asterisk has settled within her. She is here, now, learning to build, to connect, and to find her place not by imposing her old world, but by subtly adapting and contributing to the wild, ancient beauty of this one. It's a demanding, harsh existence, but for the first time, it feels like her own, carefully, intentionally constructed. The no longer alien, but a part of the rhythm of this northern land. The longhouse hearth crackles with a deeper, more comforting intensity. Its warmth, a tangible presence against the encroaching cold. She sits with the other women, her fingers moving deftly as she stitches together two pieces of hide, preparing for the harsh depths of winter. The rough texture of the fur, the taut pull of the sinew, are now intimately familiar. But amidst this quiet competence, a chilling thought, stark and unwelcome, pierces her tranquility. The possibility of leaving. It's a whisper from the forgotten corners of her modern mind. A sudden, fleeting memory of the mechanism that brought her here. The faint possibility of return. And with that thought comes a profound, unsettling realization. The idea of leaving, of stepping back into her old life, fills her with a cold dread, a deeper chill than any winter wind. Her heart, she realizes with a jolt, is no longer simply surviving here. It is truly anchored in this wild land. Her therapist's professional self, once so centered on her modern identity, now feels like a ghost, an echo. Her modern assumptions about her true home, her true purpose, have been utterly transformed. The comfortable life she knew, the career she built, the intellectual world she inhabited, they now seem distant, almost trivial compared to the raw, visceral truths of this existence. She considers the chieftain, his unwavering gaze, the subtle acceptance from the women, the shared silence with the berserker. These are the threads of her current reality, the bonds that tie her to this place. To sever them would be to tear a piece of her newly forged soul. Her physical body, hardened by months of labor and cold, now protests the very thought of returning to a softer, less demanding existence. She pictures herself in her old clothes, in her old environment, and the image feels wrong, ill-fitting, like a skin she has shed. The smells of this world, peat, smoke, salt, damp earth, are her new normal. The rhythms of its days, dictated by sun and seasons, are deeply imprinted. She is no longer an observer, but an active, integral part of this ancient ecosystem. The deep, guttural sounds of the Viking tongue, still largely unintelligible, now carry an emotional resonance she can feel, even if she can't articulate it. The quiet courage of these people, their fierce resilience, their profound connection to the land, has permeated her being. This week, the sudden, sharp awareness of her deep attachment to this world and the terrifying prospect of losing it has laid bare the profound truth of her transformation. She is no longer an outsider, simply adapting to survive. She is a part of this ancient tapestry, and the thought of unweaving herself from it is more frightening than any cold, putrid awakening could ever be. The crispy harp with the scent of frozen earth and distant pine now feels less like a threat and more like a bracing embrace this week. The communal fire in the longhouse has died down, leaving a deep, quiet chill that encourages introspection. She steps outside, drawn by the profound silence and the breathtaking expanse of the night sky above Trondheim. The stars, countless and brilliant, blaze with an intensity rarely seen in her light-polluted modern world. Ancient beacons in an unchanging cosmos. Her therapist's mind, usually processing human emotion, is now overwhelmed by the sheer, unyielding majesty of nature. The vastness above, the cold earth beneath her rough boots, anchor her in a way no office ever could. The conflict of the previous week, the chilling thought of leaving, has solidified into a quiet resolve. This is her home now. These people are her people. Her modern assumptions about her place in the world, her very identity, have been irrevocably reshaped by the raw, demanding beauty of this Viking land. Under the silent, watchful gaze of the ancient stars, she whispers a solemn vow. It's not spoken in their tongue, nor in any language they would understand. It's a promise to herself, a commitment deeper than time itself. She will use her subtle gifts, her quiet power to soothe and to calm, not to change their fundamental nature, but to help them navigate the inevitable storms of their lives with less internal torment. She will be a steady presence, a silent anchor in a world that often demands unyielding strength. Her role is not to impose her future, but to offer a quiet, empathetic hand in their present. Her modern skills, once a source of ethical dilemma, now feel like a responsibility, a unique contribution she can make. Her ability to observe, to understand nonverbal distress, to offer grounding, becomes her silent language of care. She won't seek to turn berserkers into passive individuals, but perhaps to offer them a sliver of choice, a moment of respite from their internal demons, allowing them to return to their fierce roles with a slightly clearer mind. She is not a warrior, not a hunter, but she is a healer of a different kind, one who understands the wounds of the spirit. Her body, though shivering slightly in the cold, feels a profound sense of purpose, a warmth that radiates from within. The vast, star-strewn sky, once a symbol of endless distance, now feels like a silent witness to her commitment. This week, under the ancient, indifferent stars, she has made peace with her displacement. She is no longer a lost soul yearning for a forgotten future, but a woman forged by the past, ready to embrace her unique, challenging role in this wild, vibrant present. Her vow, unspoken and profound, marks a new chapter, a testament to a belonging that transcends time itself. But a deep, pervasive unease, whispered from returning scouts, a rival jarl from a settlement further north along the fjord, nurses a bitter grievance from a past raid where his warriors were repelled with unexpected ease. News travels slow but deep in these lands, carried by traders and wary travelers, and with that news comes a new, unsettling current. Her own quiet influence, her unique wisdom, is now being perceived as a perilous threat. Her therapist's mind, usually dissecting individual emotional landscapes, is forced to comprehend the complex, dangerous geopolitics of this ancient world. Her subtle interventions, meant to alleviate suffering, have inadvertently become a strategic asset for her adopted clan. The calmer berserker, while perhaps a less terrifying individual, represented a subtle shift in their fighting dynamics, contributing to a defensive success that angered a powerful foe. Her modern assumption that her therapeutic skills operate solely on an individual level is brutally exposed as naive. In this interconnected society, every influence, however small, ripples outward, impacting power dynamics and even the fragile balance of peace and war. She overhears fragments of hushed conversations, not understanding the words, but the lowered voices, the grim expressions, the sharp gestures towards the north, speak a universal language of danger. The chieftain's gaze, when it falls on her, is no longer just assessing. It holds a new layer of protection, a silent acknowledgement of her unwitting role, but also a stark warning of the danger she now embodies. Her very presence, her capacity to subtly influence the emotional fortitude of their warriors, is seen as a new, potent form of magic, a weapon to be either coveted or eliminated by a rival. The weight of this new threat presses down on her, cold and heavy. She watches the warriors sharpen their axes with a grim intensity. The women quietly prepare supplies for a potential skirmish, and she understands that her once hidden power is now out in the open, a target. Her modern knowledge, once a source of personal pride and ethical conflict, is now a dangerous, visible entity, perceived as a form of manipulation by those who do not understand it. Her body feels the tension, a constant knot in her stomach, a prickling awareness in her skin. Sleep offers little respite, her dreams filled with the clash of steel and the chilling echoes of unseen threats. This week has transformed her from a quiet, internal force into an unwitting player in a larger, deadlier game. The chieftain's subtle protection and the rival jarl's vengeful whisper underscore a terrifying truth. Her unique wisdom, her very being, has become a perilous asset in the ancient struggle for power, forcing her to confront the full, dangerous scope of her butterfly effect. The air is charged with the acrid scent of raw desperation, mingling with the ever-present wood smoke and the sharp tang of coming winter. A chilling message has arrived from the rival Jarl. Either the strange woman with her unsettling influence departs, or his longships will descend upon their settlement, bringing fire and death. The ultimatum, delivered by a grim-faced scout, hangs heavy in the longhouse, a palpable threat that chokes the very air. Her therapist's mind, usually a safe space for analytical thought, is now a maelstrom of terror and profound ethical conflict. Her modern assumption about individual freedom and the right to exist is brutally confronted by the ancient, unforgiving reality of tribal warfare. Her quiet attempts to alleviate suffering have spiraled into a direct threat to the very existence of her adopted home. She is the wedge, the catalyst, the price. She watches the chieftain, his face a mask of grim resolve, his hands clenched. He does not speak to her directly, but his occasional, burdened glance conveys the impossible choice that has been laid at their feet. The unspoken plea from the women, their faces etched with fear for their children, their homes, is a constant, heavy pressure. The berserker, calmer, yes, but now a symbol of unintended consequence, sits silently by the hearth, his gaze distant. They all understand the stakes. Her choice feels utterly impossible. Her life, or the peace, perhaps even the survival, of this community that has, against all odds, become her home. To leave means to abandon the fierce bonds she has painstakingly forged, to relinquish the purpose she has found, to step back into an unknown void. To stay means to condemn them all to a brutal, inevitable conflict, a future she cannot bear to envision. The weight of this decision presses down on her, an unbearable, crushing force. Her modern therapeutic training, designed to find win-win solutions, to mediate conflict, to empower clients, is utterly useless in the face of this primal, binary choice. There is no therapy for this. There is only sacrifice. Her body feels cold, numb, yet acutely aware of every rustle of fur, every shift of a foot in the longhouse. The sounds of everyday life, once comforting, now seem fragile, precariously balanced on her decision. This week has confronted her with the most profound choice of her existence, stripping away all modern illusions, leaving her with the stark, brutal truth. Sometimes, the act of simply being, of merely existing in a world not her own, demands the ultimate sacrifice, an impossible choice between her life and the survival of the people she has come to care for. The silence of the longhouse is deafening, waiting for her decision. She scrambles through the dense, frosted undergrowth of the forest bordering the settlement, her lungs burning with the effort, the rough branches tearing at her thick woolen tunic. The sounds of pursuit, gruff shouts, and the heavy thud of boots echo distressingly close behind her. Her choice, agonizing but clear, has been made. she would leave, sacrificing herself to protect the community. But escape is proving far more perilous than sacrifice. Her modern survival instincts, honed by countless self-defense classes and theoretical knowledge, are now facing the ultimate brutal test. Her therapist's analytical mind, usually processing emotional states, is now a cold, calculating machine, assessing risks, mapping terrain, desperate for any advantage. Her modern assumptions about her own physical limitations, about the inherent safety of a structured society, are utterly shattered by the primal terror of being hunted. Every twisted root, every slick patch of ice, every shadow becomes a potential hiding place or a fatal trap. She ducks behind a thick, snow-dusted fir, pressing herself flat against its rough bark, the cold seeping through her worn clothes. She holds her breath, the sharp scent of pine filling her nostrils, trying to quiet the frantic thumping of her heart. The guttural shouts of her pursuers, men loyal to the rival Jarl, grow closer, their voices harsh and relentless. She understands their intent. Capture, not necessarily kill, but capture to use her as a bargaining chip, or worse, to remove her perceived magical influence. The fate of her adopted home hangs on her evasion. Her modern skills, once subtle and unseen, are now reduced to the most basic forms of survival: stealth, speed, and desperate resourcefulness. She uses the terrain, the dense forest cover, the uneven ground, to her advantage, moving with an instinctive cunning she didn't know she possessed. Her trained ability to observe, to read micro-expressions, now helps her anticipate the movements of her pursuers, allowing her precious seconds to react. She tastes blood in her mouth from the exertion, her muscles screaming with fatigue, but a primal, fierce determination keeps her moving. Her body, though battered and exhausted, feels a strange, defiant surge of adrenaline. The cold dread of capture is a constant companion, but it is tempered by the fierce resolve to protect the people she has chosen. This week has stripped away everything but the raw will to survive, forcing her to confront the brutal truth that her life, once a comfortable given, is now a desperate gamble. The sounds of pursuit echo in her ears, a chilling symphony of survival, as she pits her wits and her strength against a world that seeks to capture the very influence she once feared. The sharp onion now fills her nostrils with a desperate, final breath this week. The sounds of pursuit, the heavy thud of boots, and the guttural shouts grow painfully close. She can feel the ground vibrating beneath her, a frantic drumbeat to her fleeing heart. Her clothes are torn, her body bruised and aching, but her will to protect her chosen home remains fierce. She knows she cannot outrun them much longer. The forest, once a shield, now feels like a trap. Her modern values, deeply ingrained concepts of individual human dignity and nonviolence clash with the brutal, unforgiving reality of ancient warfare. She chose to leave, a self-sacrifice to prevent bloodshed for the community she has come to love. But now, cornered, the choice shifts. Capture, she knows, is not an option. It would mean being used as a pawn, dragging her adopted family further into conflict. Or worse, becoming a vessel for the rival Jarl's curiosity and cruelty. There is another path, one born of desperation, but also of a fierce, protective love for this wild, brutal world she now calls home. She spots it, a sheer cliff face, its jagged rocks plummeting into the churning, icy waters of the fjord below. The sound of the waves, crashing against the stones far beneath, is a cold, stark invitation. Her modern assumptions about avoiding self-harm, about seeking help and preserving life at all costs, are overridden by a primal, desperate logic. This is not despair. It is a final, strategic act of protection. By removing herself entirely, by making herself an irrecoverable ghost, she eliminates the leverage against her people. It is the ultimate therapeutic intervention, a final, irreversible boundary to ensure their peace. She turns, facing her pursuers for a brief, defiant moment as they burst through the trees, their faces grim and determined. She sees their shock, their sudden pause as they realize her intent. In that fraction of a second, her gaze finds one of them, a flicker of recognition, a silent, powerful communication of her purpose. Then, with a fierce surge of adrenaline, with a desperate prayer to forgotten gods, she steps forward into the cold, empty air. Her body, hardened by months of survival, feels the brief, exhilarating rush of freefall. The sharp, cold wind tearing at her, the sounds of the world, the shouts of her pursuers, the crash of the waves, become a distant, fading roar as the icy embrace of the fjord rushes up to meet her. This week, she has made the ultimate sacrifice, a brave act of self-annihilation driven by a love forged across centuries. Her modern values, twisted and transformed, have found their final brutal expression in the ancient, unforgiving land. Her last thought is not of regret, but of a fierce, desperate hope that her chosen people will, at least, find their peace. The cold, dark water closes over her, silencing the world. She sits beside a small, still pool fed by melting snow. Hidden deep within the ancient forest, the water's surface, undisturbed by wind, offers a perfect, cold mirror. She leans forward, her reflection gazing back at her. The face staring out is hers, yet profoundly altered. Her modern assumptions about her appearance, her carefully cultivated image, are completely stripped away. Her hair, once styled, is now matted with dirt and tangled from days of desperate flight. Framing a face thinner, sharper, etched with lines of exhaustion and fierce determination. Her eyes, once trained to express empathy and gentle understanding, now hold a wild, ancient light, a deep, unwavering resilience born of raw survival. The soft therapist from her past is gone, replaced by a hardened, deeply rooted, unexpected new identity. Her modern clothes are long gone, replaced by a rough, patched tunic she salvaged, caked with mud and blood, but now a second skin. Her hands, calloused and scarred, no longer bear the faint marks of modern living, but the indelible imprints of manual labor and desperate scrambling. Her body, once accustomed to comfort, is now a lean, sinewy testament to endurance, capable of surviving on meager rations and facing the brutal elements. This new reflection is not just a physical transformation, it is a visual representation of the profound internal shift that has occurred. Her therapist's introspection, once focused on self-awareness and emotional regulation, now sees a woman capable of extreme action, of profound sacrifice. The impossible choice she faced last week, the desperate leap, was not an act of surrender, but an act of fierce protection, a testament to her unwavering commitment to her adopted home. Her old identity, her very profession, has been subsumed by the primal needs of this world. She is not a therapist in Viking Scandinavia. She is a survivor, a protector, a silent guardian forged by fire and ice. The taste of cold, clean water on her tongue is a bitter reminder of her desperate solitude, but also of a stark, undeniable freedom. The quiet sounds of the forest, the rustle of unseen creatures, the distant cry of a hawk are not threats, but simply the symphony of her new, wild existence. This week, staring into the reflecting pool, she has fully embraced her new self. The journey has stripped her bare, but in doing so, has revealed a core of strength and resilience she never knew she possessed. She is no longer defining herself by what she does, but by who she has become. A woman of this land, utterly and irrevocably, a ghost of her past, a fierce truth of her present, on a softening breeze, now mingles with the familiar wood smoke around the longhouse this week. The sun, returning with more warmth and light, casts longer shadows across the bustling settlement. She moves among the people, no longer an outsider. Her hands, nimble and strong, help prepare the ground for planting. Feeling the rich, dark earth beneath her hardened fingers, the physical demands, once overwhelming, are now simply the rhythm of her days. Her mind, surprisingly calm, begins to recall the long, arduous journey of her adaptation. She remembers the cold, putrid awakening, the shock of the mud, the jarring cacophony of unknown cries. She sees herself as that terrified outsider, a woman lost and bewildered, clinging to a fading memory of her modern life. Her therapist's perspective, honed by years of helping others process trauma and change, now turns inward, reflecting on her own profound transformation. She recalls the gnawing hunger, the fear in unfamiliar faces, the desperate struggle to simply understand. Then the memories shift, becoming warmer, brighter. The accidental brush of a hand by the fire, the shared, guttural laugh over spilled ale, the quiet hum that brought a moment of peace to the berserker. She remembers the growing, unspoken bond while mending nets, the tentative trust from the women, the chieftain's assessing gaze that eventually settled into a silent acknowledgement. Her modern assumptions about who she was, about her capabilities and vulnerabilities, have been utterly redefined by the crucible of this ancient world. She was once a woman who spoke to problems. Now she is a woman who asterisk live solutions, who embodies a quiet strength. She sees the evidence of her integration all around her. The children no longer duck away, but sometimes offer a small, shy smile. The women share tasks with her, their movements synchronized in shared effort. The berserker, though still carrying his warrior's intensity, sometimes seeks her silent presence, a subtle shift in his demeanor that speaks of an enduring, quiet gratitude. She is no longer just tolerated. She is a respected, vital member. Her unique wisdom an unspoken, recognized asset. She is the quiet one, the steady hand, a woman whose calm presence subtly alters the emotional climate of their community. Her body, imbued with the strength of this land, feels a deep, abiding connection to the earth beneath her feet. The smells of this world, the sounds, the very texture of its existence are now woven into her being. This week, reflecting on the long journey, she understands that true belonging is not given. It is earned, forged in shared struggle, and affirmed in quiet acts of mutual respect. She is no longer just surviving, she is thriving, a testament to the human capacity for profound adaptation and the unexpected finding of home in the most alien of circumstances. Her heart, once broken by displacement, is now whole, deeply rooted in this wild, vibrant present. The warmth of now drifts through the longhouse this week, a palpable sign of spring's full embrace. The days are longer, the light softer, and the air carries a sense of renewed vitality. She moves with an easy grace, helping to prepare tools for spring planting, her hands knowing the texture of wood and iron as intimately as they once knew a pen. The burdens of winter, both physical and emotional, are slowly lifting. Her senses, attuned to the subtle shifts in human emotion, now perceive a deeper, more settled peace within the community. The tension that lingered after the rival Jarl's threat and her desperate flight has receded, The chieftain, whose decision to protect her rather than expel her spoke volumes, now carries himself with a renewed, quiet authority, his gaze less burdened. The brief, terrifying conflict, spurred by her presence, has surprisingly solidified their resolve, reinforcing their communal bonds in the face of external threat. She finds herself often near the berserker, not in a covert way, but openly. He still carves, his hands shaping wood with a meticulous focus. When his brow furrows with a familiar tension, she might simply sit nearby, her own hands engaged in a rhythmic, calming task, her presence a silent, steady anchor. He doesn't rage as he once did. The raw, uncontained fury seems to have been replaced by a more internal struggle, one he now appears, in his own way, to navigate. She sees the subtle relief in his eyes when her quiet presence acts as a buffer, a silent hand guiding him back from the brink of internal chaos. It's not a cure, but a profound, ongoing healing. Her modern therapeutic understanding, once fraught with ethical dilemmas, now finds its purpose in this quiet, continuous work. She is not erasing his warrior spirit, but offering him a tool for internal regulation, a chance to choose when and how his fury manifests. This unspoken anger management, tailored to his world, is healing old wounds, not just for him, but for the community that once feared his unbridled nature. The bonds between them, forged in fire and shared purpose, have deepened, transforming suspicion into a quiet, profound respect for her unique, unspoken wisdom. Her body, strong and resilient, feels a profound sense of belonging, a rootedness she once thought impossible. The sun on her face, the rich earth in her hands, the quiet hum of the longhouse, it all speaks of a life fully lived, deeply integrated. This week, she understands that true healing is a continuous process, not a singular event. It is built on trust, presence, and a deep understanding of human need, regardless of the language spoken or the century lived. She is a therapist, yes, but more importantly, she is a member of this community, helping to heal its old wounds and solidify its bonds, not with words, but with a quiet, powerful presence. Her journey has led her to a place where her purpose is as clear and vital as the spring light, the gentle sound of birdsong, a delicate counterpoint to the distant roar of the fjord, now graces the crisp spring air this week. The scent of damp earth and budding leaves, fresh and full of promise, fills her lungs with each easy breath. She moves through the settlement, her steps light and purposeful, her hands automatically reaching for tasks that need doing, whether it's gathering herbs or helping to prepare a fishing line. The former tensions and anxieties of survival have settled into a deep, resonant peace within her. Her therapist's mind, once a battleground of ethical dilemmas, and cultural clashes, has finally found its equilibrium. The conflict between her modern values and this ancient brutality has resolved, not by compromise, but by profound integration. Her modern assumptions about her identity, her purpose, her very place in the world have transformed. She is no longer a woman displaced, but a woman rooted, belonging not to a specific time, but to this present moment, this community, this wild, beautiful land. She spends hours near the water, the rhythmic lapping of the waves against the shore, mirroring the steady beat of her own heart. She watches the children play, their shouts of laughter unburdened, and feels a quiet, protective love for them. She sees the women working, their faces strong and resilient, and feels a deep camaraderie, a silent understanding. She observes the warriors, still fierce and ready, but with a new, subtle depth in their eyes, a quiet wisdom that whispers of her unseen influence. The berserker, calmer still, now often seeks her out, not for an intervention, but for the comfort of her quiet, steady presence. Her modern skills, once her defining professional identity, are now simply extensions of her being. Her capacity for empathy, her ability to observe, to offer a grounding presence, are not therapy in their terms, but simply who she is, a silent contributor to the emotional well-being of her adopted kin. She has accepted this new, wild existence, not with resignation, but with a profound, almost spiritual sense of peace. The harsh realities are still present, but her internal landscape is no longer disturbed by them. She flows with the rhythms of the land and its people, a river finding its natural course. Her body, strong and attuned, feels utterly at home in this environment. The rough wool, the taste of simple food, the biting cold, the warmth of the fire, all sensations are now part of a comfortable, familiar whole. This week, she understands that peace is not the absence of struggle, but the acceptance of it, the profound integration of self within one's reality. She is a woman transformed, deeply rooted, no longer searching for meaning, but living it, moment by moment, breath by breath, in this ancient, wild, and utterly beautiful existence. The vast, open sky above Trondheim feels like a familiar, comforting ceiling, and the earth beneath her feet, a steadfast, beloved floor. The warm, lingering scent of summer berries and drying herbs now perfumes the air around the longhouse this week, a sweet, earthy contrast to the familiar wood smoke. The long days are full of bustling activity, children playing freely in the sun, and the hum of a prosperous, settled community. She moves among them, her presence so seamlessly integrated that it is barely noticed, yet deeply felt. Her hands, nimble and strong, tend to a small garden of herbs, cultivating subtle remedies she has learned to make from native plants. Her therapist's gaze, no longer focused on immediate survival or ethical quandaries, now widens to observe the broader tapestry of the community. She watches the children she first encountered as wary toddlers, now growing into curious, confident youths. She sees how they interact, how their parents intervene in disputes. A young boy on the verge of a tantrum is gently redirected by his mother, not with a sharp cuff, but with a quiet, grounding touch and a low, soothing hum, a direct, subtle echo of her own early interventions. It is a profound, almost spiritual experience to witness, a silent testament to her lasting legacy. Her modern assumptions about the speed of change, about the directness of influence, are wonderfully overturned. She hasn't taught lessons or given speeches. Instead, through countless small, non-verbal acts of calm, of reflective presence, she has subtly woven a thread of gentle wisdom into the fabric of this generation. The children are growing up with an implicit understanding of emotional regulation, a subtle capacity for self-soothing that was not as prevalent before her arrival. The berserker, now an older, respected warrior, still carries his intensity, but his rages are rare, more controlled, a contained storm rather than a destructive deluge. He sometimes offers a quiet, almost knowing glance in her direction, a silent acknowledgement of the peace she helped him find. Her modern skills, once seemingly irrelevant, have become a quiet, potent force for generational change. She is not a shaman, not a chieftain, but a silent architect of emotional resilience, shaping the nascent psychology of a people through consistent, non-judgmental presence. She has created a subtle ripple effect, fostering a community that, while still fierce and wild, possesses a slightly deeper capacity for internal calm and communal empathy. Her body, strong and vibrant, feels a deep satisfaction, a quiet pride. The warm sun on her face, the rich earth beneath her calloused hands, the joyful sounds of children. It all speaks of a life well lived, a purpose profoundly fulfilled. This week, she understands that legacy is not always built on grand achievements or monumental changes, but often in the quiet, consistent acts of kindness, presence, and subtle guidance that ripple through generations. She is witnessing the slow, beautiful blooming of a seed she planted, a testament to the enduring power of gentle wisdom, proving that even in the most ancient of worlds, healing can take root and flourish. At her face this final week. It's a powerful symphony, the crashing waves against the shore, the cries of gulls, the deep, rhythmic creak of timbers as longships are made ready. She stands at the water's edge, not as a hesitant observer, but as a woman deeply intertwined with this ancient, vibrant world. Her hands, calloused and strong, grip a coil of rope, ready to secure a sail. Her muscles taut with purpose, her therapist's mind, once a repository of modern theories and clinical techniques, has been stripped bare and reforged. Her modern assumptions about control, about planning, about a predictable future, have dissolved like sea foam on the rocks. Instead, she now carries a profound understanding of acceptance, of resilience, of the human spirit's capacity to thrive in the face of relentless challenge. She faces the unknown future, not with fear or anxiety, but with a newfound Viking spirit, a quiet, fierce determination, a readiness for whatever the tides may bring. She watches the chieftain, his weathered face scanning the horizon, his hand resting on the hilt of his axe. There is a deep, unspoken respect between them, forged in crises and quiet understanding. The berserker, standing near a prow, is still a formidable figure, but his gaze is steady, his breaths deep and even. He meets her eyes across the throng of warriors, offering a single, subtle nod of acknowledgement, a silent testament to the inner peace she helped him find. The children she nurtured with soft hums and steady presence now run confidently through the bustling preparations, their laughter mingling with the sea's roar. A generation subtly shaped by her quiet wisdom, her modern skills, once an intellectual framework, have transformed into an embodied wisdom. She is not prescribing solutions, but living them, a silent anchor in a world of constant motion. Her presence, her unwavering calm, her capacity for non-judgmental observation, these are her tools, woven into the very fabric of this community. She has become an integral part of their narrative, a living bridge between worlds, yet wholly present in this one. Her body, hardened and attuned, feels a powerful resonance with the roaring sea, with the strength of the mountains, with the resilient spirit of these people. The rough wool against her skin, the salty spray on her lips, the cold iron in her handle are tactile confirmations of her profound belonging. This week, as she stands on the precipice of an unknown future, she understands that her journey has not been about returning to who she was, but about becoming someone entirely new, someone forged in the crucible of a past life, ready to face whatever comes with a Viking heart. Her past is a distant echo, her future an open sea, but her present, fierce and vibrant, is utterly, undeniably real, and she is ready